There is a mandatory evacuation here on the south shore of Long Island.
What can you do? Mother Nature is Mother Nature.
You guys are leaving, correct?
Yes, we're leaving right now.
Whoa, we really have a gust picking up here right now.
They're expected to reach 85 miles per hour, those winds.
The whole parking lot and beach is flooded out now. I'm going to have Keith Lopez, our cameraman, tilt down over to the white fence. Half of it's underwater.
Never seen nothing like this before. Never thought about it, never thought it would ever happen. Especially this far, we're about a mile away from the water.
The bayfront, had I known we were going to have a 14-foot tsunami coming down Reynolds Channel, I would have done a lot more. But they kept equating it to Irene, saying, oh, it's only going to be a foot or two over Irene, don't worry. Well, it took just about everything on the bayfront and put it in the middle of the Lido Boulevard. And, you know, that was a very, very, very difficult situation because the National Weather should have known better. And they should have informed the people and not told them that it was going to be like a former storm, which was not even a storm. It was just a rising tide. This was a 60-knot, 70-knot wind and pushing water all the way from Oyster Bay into Reynolds Channel. And the reason the people in Island Park got it so badly was the tide from the East Rockaway Inlet and the tide from Jones Inlet came together right there and sandwiched them. They didn't have a chance. No one ever thought that that was going to happen.
The TV weather people are so much better prepared for this type of event. You know, we knew 48 hours ahead of time that this was going to happen. And if you didn't start to get yourself ready 48 hours ahead of time, then you were very foolish.
The timing of the storm, the track and the speed at which it was coming, it was going to arrive within an hour and a half either side of high tide. And it was like 15 minutes before high tide is when it did arrive. And it was big, which means it was spread way out, and which means that the dome of water, which is the tidal surge, is bigger than the dome of water in, say, a cyclonic type hurricane, which is like Andrew, was very small in comparison to Sandy, way more powerful. So Sandy was carrying this huge tidal surge with her, and I knew it was bad.
We were here during the storm. Myself, my wife, and my children were in the house, and about 7 houses up the block there was the start of a house fire that spread to 8 houses. So we were in our bedroom, the power was out, and it seemed like the power went on because our room started to glow, and it was the light from the flames of our neighbors' houses that were on fire. And then we watched the fire very quickly move towards essentially 7 other houses. Came downstairs, we stood out on the front porch. This was after the high tide, but there was still about 3 feet of water in the street. And it was so surreal because it's 60, 80 mile an hour winds. The noise of the wind through trees is extremely loud, at that speed. The water in the street was being affected by the winds, so it was sort of a rippling of the water. And then the reflection of the fire on the water and the wind, it was like the street was on fire. It was like, this is crazy. It was then when we could see silhouettes of our neighbors carrying their children and dogs walking up the street in like 3 feet of water to get away from the flames.
My grandmother had moved to Long Beach in, I believe, 1949, maybe 1950, somewhere along there. Lived on West Penn Street and had not ever had water in her basement. And so the next morning I got a call that Grandma's house has 4 feet of water in the basement. And my parents had water, so they live in Lido Beach. The water went from the ocean, across Lido Boulevard, across Reynolds Drive, into their garage, through their house, and out through the back. And there was a very weird dynamic that you only had to drive 15 minutes away to have people that dealt with none of this. You know, you just went to the other side of Sunrise Highway in Rockville Center, and you could tell who's sitting in a diner, who just happened to live in the area and be at the diner, and who was a refugee from just a few minutes farther south, who was living with a house with water, ruined flooring, ruined downstairs. And some people, who especially who live in the west end of Long Beach, the canals of Long Beach, parts of Island Park, their first floor is their only part of their house. They only live on one floor. And so they were, you immediately got the sense of that this was really bad.
You know, we had been here since '58, and there was never a drop of water in this house. You know, I'm talking hurricanes like Donna, 1960, and Gloria, which was some of the worst. Never had water on the floor. In the garage, yes, in the crawl space. But Sandy had it over this windowsill, so we had close to 3 to 4 feet in our first floor. So we're talking a storm, at least in this area, that was at least 3 feet higher than any other storm.
The water started coming under our back door, and we grabbed towels and we tried to fight it back, you know, to keep which in retrospect, what we should have done is start moving stuff from the basement upstairs. And the water just came and it came, and eventually we just said, forget it. We went up, we have about 4 or 5 flight steps. We went up to the top of those steps and just watched the water come up, come up, come up, come up.
There's something brewing out in the Atlantic, you know, that they weren't sure which or where it was going to go. You know, so the next thing you know, I'm going like, what the heck's going on here? This thing isn't supposed to be coming up towards us, you know, this time of year. And then sure enough, you know, the European model said it's going to come right into New Jersey or the New York Harbor. And of course, obviously, the rest is all history. And I would say probably 98% of the boats that stayed in the water didn't sustain any damage. They were all fine, you know, as long as they secured them correctly. I mean, our plans were basically, if it's like Irene or a little deeper, we have hip waders, and we're going to go outside and, you know, do damage control, so to speak. And as the first surge came in, you know, we're sitting there playing cards with the kids, and all of a sudden you hear the boat going clunk, 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 clunk. It's like, all right, well, we saw it was deep water a couple minutes ago. You know, now all of a sudden the boat's all piled up into the house. We went to the back door where we took our boots and stuff off and went to go get into the water, going like, that's too deep. You know, that's 5, 6 foot deep in the back area there. And so then it was kind of like, all right, well, we're not going out there to do anything with the boats. It would be too dangerous to try to fend boats off, you know, above your head, you know, with 70-mile-an-hour winds pushing on them. You know, next thing you know, the water's coming a little higher, you know, and then coming a little higher. And I brought my hip waders from the back porch, like, into the house. And actually, Mike did his own wood floors there, so he took a lot of pride into it. You know, and then, of course, unfortunately, another 10, 15 minutes later, the water coming into the house, you know, getting on the wood floors. You know, at that point, I guess I was able to put my hip waders on walking around the house so that, you know, I wasn't getting wet and cold. But, you know, it was too late for the floor.
Problem was in Superstorm Sandy, though, the tide went out so fast when it did go out that most of the houses, at the level they were at, they had like 6 foot of water in the houses. And the tide went out outside the house, but the water was still held in the house. It couldn't get out the house fast enough. And with all that weight on there, it just imploded all the floors. All the bay houses by me. Everything is right there where the house sat. The big cast iron stoves, the kitchen, everything that was in the kitchen, everything is right there.
just wound up right down because the floors just blew out, and everything just dropped out from all that. So in that case, in a storm like that, you guess you'd need a lot more holes. And in my house, it blew a big hole in the east wall of my house, and everything got out through that. That's where it went out, through that east wall. But the house was so strongly held down, everything stayed there. I lost a hole. I had a big 4-foot hole in my house, but lost all the windows on that side. They blew out. But the house was there, and you can fix that other stuff again, and we did.